We are back yet again for another collective review for all of the pros here in Pro Feedback. We are going to be reviewing a member's track today. His name is Sven, and he's given us this really awesome, intense rock track with some orchestral elements included. So this is something that we're doing just to let you guys see the kind of feedback that we offer the members inside of Pro Feedback. And if you have not heard already, you probably should have, but March 1st is the date that all of you guys are going to be welcome to join us if you'd like to. Up until now, only members of Sync Academy and Sync Edge have been able to join, but on March 1st, I'm actually going to open it up to everybody and give the first 100 members a pretty intense discount actually for signing up and joining us early. So we're excited to have you join us. We really want you to be a part of this cool thing. We're seeing amazing positive testimonials and reviews from our members currently. Most of them are saying within the first couple of months, actually, of even getting a couple tracks reviewed, that they're drastically improving their producing, mixing, and mastering skills. Only a couple of months, and they're already seeing significant improvement. So you can only imagine a couple months down the road what kind of stuff this is going to provide for you. So if you've been in any sort of situation where you're unsure, you're uncertain, you're anxious, you're not really knowing whether or not you have what it takes to succeed, or maybe you've been rejected by quite a few libraries and you're just like, is it me? Is it them? And you just have a lot of questions kind of looming around your sync licensing career. Pro Feedback can basically be the one-stop shop that can sort of put an end to all those questions and get you the answers that you want to decide and to know for sure, are you creating licensable music? And if you aren't, we're going to try to, in our most productive and positive way, help you to make some better tracks and to get accepted by those libraries and get that get those placements. Of course, with all that said, we're not sugarcoaters. We're not here just to make you feel good. We're not here just to tell you that everything's great and you're awesome and just keep doing it. We're trying to be like ethical doctors here. If you've got a problem, we're going to be honest about it. We're going to let you know what you really need to work on, okay? So we feel that we are doing it in a really positive and open way. We're not doing it in an overly critical or harsh way, but we want to make sure that you guys are aware that you're going to be getting honest feedback from this service. It's not just there to pat you on the back for just putting a track up there. We're going to let you know what you can do to improve. So if that sounds like a good deal to you, definitely keep an eye out for everything on March 1st. I'll definitely release all those details when we get to it. But let's go ahead and listen to Sven's track. We'll take a listen all the way through, and then I'll ask each one of our pros, including myself, to give a note on it. So here we go. Let's take a listen. All right. I hope you guys were awake. That was a pretty intense one. I like that. I'm obviously, I grew up a metalhead, so I always have a soft spot in my heart for this kind of music. So the first thing that I loved about this was the drums, actually. Like the drum samples sounded really, really, really good. Obviously, I'm a drummer, so I pay attention to that quickly. So I really actually liked those drums. I like the programming. I like mostly the samples. They just felt really, really good. The guitar sounds sounded really, really good as well. So I think in terms of the sonic choices there of the instruments, really, really high quality. Definitely some things that can be improved upon, and we're going to sort of dive into those. But I first wanted to just say, The energy is definitely something that I just love this kind of music, so I really dig it. I do think there's probably going to be some things we can talk about to aim this sort of and channel this energy into more of a licensable direction, but there's definitely going to be some issues I think we're all going to start to notice as we go through these notes. But yeah, just really fun, upbeat, well, not so much upbeat, but really intense music that I really, really love. So I'm into that. So Scott, maybe you can start us off with some thoughts you had about this one. What did you think?
Sure. Well, I'm going to agree with you. The energy was fantastic. It definitely lent itself to very aggressive but kind of lively, dynamic track. Um, I think a couple things. I'm just going to look through my notes here. That there was, I think, one section near the middle where the synth and the horns were kind of competing for space, and it was almost like they were doing like a call and response back and forth. It would have been nice in terms of mixing to maybe put them a little more into the left and the right channels a little more distinctly so they weren't competing, and then it would kind of almost be like a bounce back and forth, which I think would be kind of fun and more dynamic. I love the harmonized. I always love harmonized guitars when they come in like that. I find that they sound a lot fuller, especially when you're trying to create a lead that kind of carries the track. So using the harmonized guitar with the two of them together always sounds really nice to me. So I like that a lot. Maybe the synth sounded a little bit flat in comparison to the big crunchy guitars and the big drums. So maybe adding a little bit of saturation to it, or distortion or fuzz or something that's going to give it a little more character, I think would have been nice. And then I think my last point would be maybe the ending. I felt like the ending was a little bit flat. It could have ended on maybe your final boom note with a big crash, something that an editor could kind of manipulate and use as a sting. I think in terms of trying to use it in that way, it might be a little more versatile to have a more distinct ending that kind of punctuated all that energy that was building up in that third act.
Absolutely, man. Great. Really, really cool thoughts. Hans, how about you? What'd you think? Oh, you're muted, Hans, or your volume's down. Try that again.
Here we go.
There you go.
I really liked the energy of this one. My main critique is the form, and that it gets in all these different moods. That is just like the guitars, the harmony guitars for me. That's more like prog rock. It's a different style. And then the beginning is metal. I really like it, and I think it's actually, especially in the beginning, that's really licensable. And then there comes a B part and a C part, and the C part is like halftime, which for me doesn't fit. And in the B part, when the strings come, the staccato strings come, I felt that they sound kind of like strings, but not enough like strings and not enough like synthesizers. So they were kind of not working for me. Also, the staccato is too long for that kind of energy you want to have. You want to have them really want to have a short staccato or spiccato or something like that, where it's more like a really aggressiveness. So in terms of the melody, I found that it felt like you're looking for a melody, but it's not there yet. I couldn't, I'm listening. I'm listening and I try to remember anything, and I have a hard time. I do remember the beginning, and I really liked it. So it seems like if you stay with that energy that you have in the beginning and kind of develop that, rather than to add all these different elements, you probably end up with a more cohesive song.
Right. Yeah, I concur with a lot of it, especially the slow halftime section into the faster section. I felt like that transition was very, very awkward. It was just kind of, it needed some adjustments, or it needed to be smoothed out a different way, or just thought of it in a little bit of a different way. It just didn't quite work for me either. So, but thank you, man. I appreciate that. Mike, what'd you think?
Yeah, so I think the track is great. I like the energy is awesome. I like that it's incorporating a lot of orchestral stuff with this like sort of rock metal thing. I think that where this track can really improve is I think that you should lean more towards it being a hybrid of rock, electronic, and orchestral. Find that sweet spot, like to where, like, especially adding more of like electronic production, like have the drums layered in with like tough like beats too. big like sort of bass line, like way up front kind of thing. Really gritty synths to like go with the guitars, so kind of like steer it more, if you steer it more into that sort of Mick Gordon, like Cell Dweller kind of like style and that kind of vibe. I think that you'll see more uses for this track like nowadays, so this is a good like sort of metal track, but like the production is a little bit dated, just in the sense of, I think it's good for metal, but it's like the way metal and a lot of music is nowadays is, there's a lot of electronics that are that's mixed in there, and I think that this track can definitely use a lot of that too.
Yeah, I concur. I completely got taken in by Cell Dweller when I first got into sync licensing. So if you guys don't know who Cell Dweller is, just search him on YouTube and be prepared to have your mind blown away, because he is one of the most ridiculous producers out there. Really incredible inspiration, though, for how do you put together rock music, electronic elements, and strings. Like, he is basically, for me, the golden standard of who I look to how to do that. No way am I getting anywhere close to his quality, but I really do look up to him in terms of what he can do. So absolutely, man. Thanks for those recommendations. Trevor, what'd you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of going to be the bad guy here. The I think where do I start? Okay, the strings and basically all the orchestral elements were just too fake sounding, and it's really hard unless you pay a lot of money to get really nicer string libraries to do those fast strings and have them not sound fake. Those da 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 da. And so what a lot of people tend to do, which actually works really well, is you just follow your guitar chugs with strings or brass. Where if your guitar is kind of going, your strings just kind of follow and go da 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 da, and they're more accenting and not becoming their own melody. Because throughout this song, I'm constantly hearing this kind of like this fight to like be, what's the melody, what's the main melody, is it the strings, is it this lead guitar, is it that synth that comes in, like what's going on? I was just chaotic. And if you think about this track, like if I were to play the ending, because this is my biggest I guess you could say issue with this track, is that ending just becomes wild and I have no idea what's going on. There's a ton of stuff happening, and if I were to try to attach that to visuals, I don't know of a visual that would want that to accent it. Like, I don't know of a sport or like a reality show or a movie or something where the audio needs to be all of that stuff to complement visuals. And so I would, if I were you, I would kind of think about, okay, what do I want to be on top of? Which I will say the strongest part of this track is the drums and the guitar. Those drums and those guitar, like, you clearly know what you're doing. The drums sound great. Those guitars are mixed and recorded great. Those are perfect. And then you have all this stuff on top that just kind of, they feel like really great stuff, and then a bunch of just stuff thrown on top. And so I would try to figure out, and I guess my suggestion would be to go to some libraries and find some hybrid rock albums and see what worked for them, and try to see if you can fit your, great drums and guitar skill in that kind of realm, and adopt to those things, adopt some different string techniques or some different synth techniques, because all of that stuff that you throw on top just kind of doesn't work at the moment. So those are kind of my thoughts. I know it's a little harsh there, but that's just
no, but I love that sort of clarity there, because I think, yeah, there's definitely this fork in the road. I think for Sven is like, do you want to go into this orchestral, larger than life, big epic production mode, or like Trevor was pointing out, and I noticed, like, your drums and guitar work are like on fire, really, really well done. And there is a place for straight up rock music where it's just a rock band. You don't need to even worry about strings. You don't have to worry about synths. You don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. It can literally just be like a 3 or 4 piece metal rock track that does really well with sports as well. So you've got some options there. So just know that if you go into that orchestral hybrid lane, it's just more in depth, a lot more work, a lot more attention to detail. But if you love it, jump on, go, grab it with both hands. But just know that you can also go straight up just rock. And that's actually, I've gotten tons of placements. I've had a lot of my career built on literally just straight up rock tracks, not much else going on, a couple of transition effects here and there in it, but it's really just drums, guitar, bass, and a lead guitar, like four things, and maybe some percussion on the side. And I'm getting placements with that. So just know that you do have a couple of options there. And Philip, how about you, man? I know that you do, I think you do country, but I think you've done some rock, right?
Yeah, and I'm primarily a bass player and pretty extensive rock background, playing in bands and stuff. So a lot of times I go after the drums and bass first. And I agree with everyone that the drums are great. I could have stood to have the bass poking through just a little bit more, tone wise. And I give this note a lot on some of my critiques is really spending time with the kick drum bass EQ relationship and not having them occupy the same low end. Pick one that's going to take the low lows and pick the other one that's going to take the more mid lows. I usually find that I like the bass, especially on a track like this, to take the mid range so it'll just poke through a little bit more and maybe even dirty it up a little bit with some distortion or something like that for something this aggressive. And I felt like the strings, especially when they hit the long notes, could really benefit from some pretty extreme dynamics and some automation with swells, and they just kind of sounded like a keyboard note, just a sine wave, just which is kind of sucks the life out of the cool rhythm section that you got going, and becomes distracting rather than add to the track. Also, just I think everybody else has kind of touched on this, but I didn't really hear any singable hooks through here. Cool track. I love all the fast guitar stuff is cool, but after you listen to it and if you said sing this back to me, I don't really know where I would start. It's just like, well, it's cool, it's energetic, but a lot of these things that you hear on commercials and the commercials that run for a long time, you can sing those melodies whether you want to or not because they just get stuck in your head. So I think it could benefit from probably less notes in the melody aspect.
That's so powerful, yeah, and I don't say that enough, but I'm really glad you brought that up. That even though we're not writing hit songs that need to be charting on the artist charts or streaming platforms or anything like that, there still needs to be an element of like stickiness to the tracks that we produce, even instrumental ones. And you're absolutely right, like having a melody, a lead melody, even just a chord progression, a rhythm to the chord progression, something that afterwards you're like, I want to hear that again. That really stuck with me, and I'm into that. So even if we're doing sports rock music, there can still be an element of like, I'm going to create a hook, a catchy melody, or just a chorus that's so epic or so intense or so memorable that you afterwards, like Philip said, you can sing it back and you can start humming it, and it kind of gets stuck in your head. It becomes this little viral thing that just sort of carries with you. So it's a really powerful concept to keep in mind as you approach your production music. So I'm glad you brought that up. So thank you guys so much. This was really, really fun. I think for me, the only note that maybe I would add that I don't think I heard you guys add it was, for me, the last chorus started to feel a little blown out actually, mix-wise. So I don't know if that was actually just on my end, but your track is super loud. Like you definitely have, you're there in terms of your volume, and I think you can actually even come down a little bit in your intensity in your last chorus. Because I started to feel like with the low end and everything else, I started to hear a little bit of that sort of crunchy compression thing going on. So just be mindful of how you're treating your compression and your mastering settings in this track, because you're there. I mean, you can actually even come down a little bit in volume. You've got some room to spare actually. So you're well loud enough for this business. So that's really working in your favor. So thank you so much, Sven, for sending your track in, and thanks for all of you guys that watched. Thanks for all you pros that were here to give your feedback. This is the kind of stuff that you guys get with pro feedback, okay? So don't miss out on the first 100 members that are going to sign up. Hopefully, it'll be you on March 1st. You guys are going to get a massive discount on your monthly membership if you want to join our great platform. Because not only do you get your track reviewed like this, but you get to watch tracks reviewed like this. Every single review that we do is all available to be viewed on the platform. So it's an exclusive platform that you get to join, and you get to watch hours and hours and hours of tracks being reviewed by myself and by all these pros. So you can just imagine how much you're going to be learning and sort of like absorbing, even subconsciously by just consuming this kind of content on a regular basis. Trust me, within a couple of weeks, you're going to start to realize that there are certain little common threads that go through all of our notes, that go through all the feedback that we give, and these sort of secondary choices, or these natural licensable choices that we need to make sure our tracks are accepted by libraries, those will start to become part of your nature. You'll just start to think about your production music in a completely different way. And the goal is that your first choice with your producing, mixing, and mastering skills will be towards creating something more licensable, more acceptable by libraries, and more able to get those placements. So March 1st is your date. Do not miss out on it, and make sure you are one of the first 100 to join us for this great new platform.